Hi guys, welcome back to CFSI's CyberFence series, right? This is our third webinar in this series. So I think so, sorry, yeah, it is our third. We had about four in total so far. This is in total, this is our fifth, right? Because we had, I believe, two previous workshops, two previous webinars. So this is actually the fifth in the CyberFence installation. So while we wait on a lot of people to reach, because I know a lot of you all are probably stuck in traffic or stuck in work, Alex and Jonathan are actually still at work in the office there in EY. So before we get started, let me just run through the usual stuff. Most of you all might know a lot of this stuff already, but we do have a good bit of people joining us today. I think it's over 70 last time I checked. And as usual, you will be receiving a certificate of attendance for this, as well as all the others. So today we have a very special guest, our feature speaker, Mrs. Vandana Siew Sankar-Ali. She's a clinical psychologist, and she's here to psychoanalyze all of us if she didn't already. But yeah, I told her previously that maybe she's finally met her match with this bunch. But before we get on to that, and I think actually if you all check in the chat options, I've put the link to, let me just make sure it's there. Yeah, there's a link to the Dropbox folder, which has the self-care assessment sheets, which I definitely think all of you all should actually try. We had some pretty impressive results, if I do say so myself. It's all about burnout and so on. We're all pretty highly burnt out, which is normal for us, unfortunately, right? But yeah, look at the chat. We have the link to the Dropbox, well, Dropbox links to the self-assessment sheets, and there's also a link to our YouTube channel. This is where we usually post all our workshops, all our webinars that we do. All right, so yeah, before we get started, guys, you all seen my screen by chance? CFSI CyberFence, yeah, great. Okay, cool. So yeah, welcome. All right, it's brought to you by the Computer Forensics and Security Institute, which is our company. And I say our because without these guys, I would not have CFSI. These guys are my backbone. I would hope that I'm a horrible boss, but apparently I feel at being a horrible boss because I invite these guys over, I feed them, I give them gifts, I take them for drives to the beach and so on. So my attempt at being a horrible boss has failed. This is just something that I decided to do earlier this year, right? The CyberFence series. My mom and dad were teachers, and I lost my dad in June, but he was always a guy that was really big on giving back to all of his students. He taught at Hillview, my mom taught at Barataria Junior Secondary, and they always brought their work home, but in a good way sometimes, because some of their students would need some help. They didn't have that support, the parental support, or anything like that. So my mom and dad, they would always be on the phone talking to students and guiding them. Sometimes they would pay out of their own pockets for extra lessons or stationery, or even sometimes money to help students who couldn't afford to eat. All right, so this is my way of sort of honoring my dad and trying to make my mom proud still at 41 years old, and sort of giving back, right? We decided that we would try to look for sponsors, and then we decided, hey, we could just sponsor ourselves. So instead of having to show stuff from sponsors for the next workshop, what we'll actually be doing is sort of helping out some of our own people and our own friends that have small businesses. And before we start, we'll probably run a PowerPoint show with some of our friends and the small businesses that they have, and just as a way of paying it forward, right? So if you have a small business out there and you want us to showcase your stuff before the workshops and the webinars, please feel free to email me and stuff. We'll probably try to put together a slide or two for you to get you some exposure. We don't charge for these webinars. We don't charge for these workshops. The most we could hope is that maybe when we post the links to some of our friends' businesses and stuff, maybe you could give them a like on Facebook or Instagram, or even support them. All right, so it's really all about us giving back, right? So my team of super weirdos. First up, that's me, that's Shiva Parashuram. I'm the director, I'm a pen tester, forensics investigator, lecturer here at the Computer Forensics and Security Institute. We have the lovely Slavi Parashuram. She's our administrative manager who happens to keep us in check, especially on our WhatsApp group. And we have here Mr. Alex, Sam, and Jonathan Mahabir in one screen because they are both stuck at work in Ernst & Young with their big fancy jobs. All right, so they're both lecturers at CFSI as well, and they are both professional penetration testers, and they do forensics and pretty much everything under the sun. Right, next we have Mr. Deodat Fish Ganga. You all might know him. His sister always has him on videos up on, I believe it's Taste of Trini. Yeah, that's it, Deo. Yeah, so he's always starring cooking stuff. Deo is a one-man army. He does a lot of things that, I don't know, you could, from air conditioning to tiling to repairing servers, fixing networks, hacking with CFSI, ethical hacking, I should say. Then we have our very own, as I like to call him, our very own network specialist, Hulk, Mr. Joel Gooding, who has pulled me out of many jams with firewalls and routers and switches, and he's a brilliant guy. Actually, all of these guys are really brilliant. I'm kind of flattered that they choose to stick with me because I'm not yet on their level, even though I might have taught them everything. Kidding, guys. Sorry, just had to throw that there. All right, not with us though, but I'm sure he's viewing online, is Mr. Leslie Lalu. That's my very good friend. He does a lot of the data recovery and forensics for us as well, mobile forensics, network forensics. So we have a pretty tight team here, and it's not just a team, we're kind of a family. Yes, we all work together. Yes, I might pay them to consult and do stuff, but these guys are my brothers. I count on them for everything. All right, so I'm pretty happy to be able to call these guys my team, my family. So a little bit about us before we get started, right? So the Computer Forensics and Security Institute, we're all about advanced cybersecurity training. If you know about courses such as the Certified Ethical Hacker, Computer Hacking Forensics Investigator, the Certified Cisco Networking Associate, Certified Threat Intelligence Analyst. We do a lot of advanced cybersecurity training. We try to make it fun. We try to make it practical. We don't just want you to get a certificate at the end of the course. We actually want you to be able to do these things on our level, or at least on your way to being at our level. All right, so we specialize in vulnerability assessments and penetration testing of organizations. Fortunately for us, we've actually had a pretty good year with penetration testing and vulnerability assessments. We do a lot of forensics work, incident response. It's a very small niche, I would say, in Trinidad and throughout the Caribbean, but it's just stuff that we like. It's stuff that we do. Right? We do know a bit of what we're talking about. We wrote the book on it, I should say. All right, so we did a couple books out there from Pact Publishing, Digital Forensics, and Kali Linux, Assuring Security by Penetration Testing. So we do have a pretty good idea of what we're doing and what we're talking about. All right, so some of our clients, just this year alone, we did some work for some multi-billion-dollar companies like Fujitsu, Unipet, Maritime Financial, POICT in Curacao. You all might know about WePay and a couple others actually in the past year, but I didn't know how to get more entries inside the slide there, so I just left it at these. Yeah, so we have a couple partners, CTMS, Cyber Threat Management Solutions, with Mr. Aaron from the USA. That's my very good friend up there. So that's a mirror company to CFSI up in the US. We have a local partner called Foresight with Umar Mohammed, and they are my good people, POICT in Curacao. You should really take a trip to Curacao when everything is settled. Lovely place. Yeah, so today we have a very interesting agenda with some pretty cool topics. One that everyone has to deal with at some point or the other, unfortunately, right? And it's about dealing with toxic work environments. One that we face a lot, which is understanding imposter syndrome, developing coping skills, a bit of self-care routines, reaching out to your friends and peers. You can also reach out to us, right? Please always feel free to reach out to us. I'll probably put my number up in the Discord chat. So even if you all need to talk to someone, I mean, I'm not a professional like Mrs. SiewSankar-Ali here, but if you all just need someone to talk to, I'm here. You can always WhatsApp me or something. And then finally, we'll end it off by where we'll probably all just talk about our personal experiences with some pretty horrible bosses, just like that movie. Except there weren't any really great looking bosses like Jennifer Aniston, unfortunately. All right, so this recording, just like all the others, it will be posted on the YouTube channel, which I've posted up in the chat that you all can feel free to subscribe to. All right, we also have a Discord channel as well. You can probably take a picture of that, or you could probably snapshot it, take a screenshot, or you can just email us and ask us for it. You can also reach out to us on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, so we have a pretty active community on Discord. It's a really fun group. Shout out to all my kids on Discord. Love you guys a lot. You make me laugh. Tomorrow's Friday, so we expect some entertainment from Alex, aka Uncle Beppy. Yeah, and finally, to get to it, so I can shut up, we have our very lovely speaker, feature speaker and panelist, Mrs. Vandana Siew Sankar-Ali. She is a clinical psychologist. She's also my cousin. But she's been a very close friend of mine, and over the past, I would say 10 years especially, she has done a lot of checking up on me. Thank you very much for that. It's greatly appreciated. So I will hand it over to Mrs. CFSI. Now let me just change the presentation and make her presenter. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, yeah, it's all yours. So you can share your screen, Van.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and good evening. Thank you very much to CFSI for having me. It's a dear project to me because of how dear Shiva is to me, and it's really my pleasure to be here with all of you and to share in a topic that is very relevant for most people, in no matter the field that you're in, but in particular, I understand that the IT industry and the tech industry is consumed by stress levels. So I hope that we can do some justice today to being able to help you guys self-care and develop some stress management techniques. All right, so let me see how I can navigate this. Are you all seeing the agenda on the screen?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, great. So today, this is what we'll be talking about. First of all, understanding. We all say we're stressed and burnt out, understanding exactly what that means and how we can recognize that we are stressed. A big source of our stress is working in toxic environments or just living in toxic environments. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Imposter syndrome was specifically requested as a topic that we cover, and this is also an area of a large amount of stress for many persons, and particularly persons in the tech industry. So we'll talk about that. How do you recognize the signs of stress and burnout, and how do you develop healthy self-care routines? Yeah, so good. So who can relate? We're seeing here that apparently the IT industry and cybersecurity causes grave amounts of stress. So we definitely know that our stress levels are pretty high. And for those of you who have not had a chance to do the Maslach stress burnout inventory, which is in the has been circulated before, please have a chance to do it while we're having the session, so that when we get to there, we can talk about what your stress levels look like. So let's understand a little bit about what stress really is. And stress is an imbalance between what you can currently cope with and the expectations or the demands that are placed on you. It's simply that. It's just a mismatch between that. And it can be real or it can be perceived. And it results in the feeling of you feeling overwhelmed or unable to cope with what you're facing. The experience of stress diminishes us from a cognitive perspective in terms of how we can think and focus. From an emotional perspective, it causes a lot of negative emotions, and it really heralds a lot of mental health challenges: anxiety, depression, fear, anger, self-pity. It can also lead us to have unhealthy behavioral habits. So we might engage in substance use. We might end up not following healthy patterns of living, so eating poorly, poor sleep patterns, and therefore leading to chronic mental and physical illness. So excessive stress, however, and everybody has stress, and stress can also be healthy, okay? So stress doesn't always have to be a bad thing. The right amount of stress can help us to be motivated to achieve goals. However, excessive amounts of stress can result in burnout. And there are three main dimensions of burnout. One, exhaustion, and we all know what physical and mental exhaustion feels like. Cynicism or depersonalization, and that's really where you get so tired, you're so burnt out that you tend to almost disconnect. You become very detached with yourself, with other people, and sometimes you don't even identify with your role anymore. And feelings of reduced stability. So this is where in your job or in your role in your life, you feel suddenly like you're incapable or incompetent at achieving. Not sure if there's a delay.
Yeah, we still see the stress and burnout screen.
Yeah.
If you have issues and you just want to show the entire PowerPoint screen, that's fine too. We're just more interested in hearing what you have to say. Yeah.
So we're talking through about understanding as well. What are some of your sources of stress for IT professionals? And we know that generally some of the factors related to the job itself. So some of the technical aspects, these things might cause you some stress. But in doing a little bit of primary research, I understand that this is really on the lower end of stress for you guys. That's the easier stuff to deal with. The more stressful things tend to involve the dynamics of the work environment and the interpersonal relations. So we understand that in the IT industry, there are long working hours, you're always on call, sometimes you have the inability to switch off, and that switching off is very important to being able to rest and recharge. Being micromanaged, having poor compensation, so where there is a mismatch between industry standards and what you might be getting locally. Having unreasonable expectations. So someone said that the expectation that once you're somebody in IT, you know everything in IT, and also the expectation that you must get it done at whatever cost. That's a huge source of stress for many persons in multiple fields. Anger, aggression, bullying from co-workers and bosses is another source of stress. Then people have their own psychological issues that they're dealing with outside of the field. In this pandemic environment as well, a lot of people are working from home. So while you're working, you also have your general responsibilities in your personal life that you're juggling. And then imposter syndrome is another big source of stress for many persons. At this point in time, is there anything anybody else would like to contribute as another major source of stress for IT professionals?
People.
People, just generally the people, yeah.
Just people.
Yeah, I think just kind of learning to deal with difficult people in the work environment is definitely an area that makes it pretty hard for most people.
Yeah, in addition, expectations, because I know it's a point here that you have expectations, but a lot of people consider now that working from home is an acceptable standard. Some organizations, not reflective of my organization that I'm employed in, but just in general, a lot of people tend to reach beyond working hours, and it tends to become the norm. So it does heavily contribute to a lot of overwork and additional stress into environments as well.
That's a really good point. I wasn't hearing clearly, but I think I got the gist. And a lot of people, for some people, working from home works well, and then for others, it's very difficult to set boundaries and to know when you switch off and switch on, and that causes a lot of stress as well. So here's a big one: working in a toxic environment, and that's a major source of stress for a lot of people. And here's how you spot it. Here's how you know that you're working in a toxic environment. You're working in a place where there's blatant disregard for employee well-being. So let's talk about that for a second. It's common, it's normal to not be satisfied 100% of the time in the work environment, to have disagreements, to not see eye to eye. But a toxic environment is where there is this get it done. I don't care how you get it done or at what cost you get it done, but you have to get it done. And so no matter what people are going through, if someone is ill, if someone's having a personal challenge, it doesn't matter. You just have to get the job done. Another important telltale sign is where there's a really poor a negative interaction and interpersonal style within the environment. So there may be yelling, cursing, very demotivating ways of speech. People may be speaking down to others. You may also find that there may be a lot of victimization and targeting of persons just because you've spoken up or because you've made a request for something. Self-serving leaders. So this is also where you may work in an environment where a leader is really concerned about themselves, and they may not be concerned about the employees nor about the business's interests. And they may actually make decisions that are against and contrary to the best interests of the business, only because it serves them better. Fear of giving feedback. If there is that type of culture that exists, then you know that this is a toxic work environment. Having people breathe down your neck all the time. So they're giving you, they've hired you for your competency, yet they're not giving you the latitude to be able to complete your tasks with the efficiency and with the expertise that you are trained with. Overworking is a badge of honor. And this is a very interesting one. You know, they say the reward for good work is more work. But there's also a sense in this toxic work environment that if we see you working before working hours and you're working into long extra hours, and you know you're somebody who's always available to take a call, and no matter what is done or what you ask, you're doing it, that's seen as something to be celebrated, then that's cause for concern. Okay. Gossiping, favoritism, office politics, that's a toxic work environment, whether that exists at the employee level or at the supervisory level, executive level, wherever it exists. That's not a healthy working environment. We talked about people being a source of stress. And so definitely where there's a lot of aggression and bullying in the work environment, that's also very toxic. I imagine IT faces a lot of this because people get very frustrated when their systems aren't working well and they're making a lot of demands upon the IT department. So this is something I expect that you guys face quite a bit. Stifled growth. So if you find that you're working in an environment where you are not either given opportunities, or there may be limited opportunities for mobility or for promotions, or you're being bypassed for promotions, these are signs to pay attention to. Poor staff retention. So if you're seeing a very high turnover, and this is not just where persons may join an environment to be able to gain particular skills and to move up and to get a particular experience and then they move on. No, this is where persons join and then you're quickly seeing soon after they're leaving, and you're seeing a pattern of persons coming and going all the time. There's something to pay attention to. And then discrimination. So discrimination along any lines is a big telltale sign. So I just pause for a second here to find out, do you guys identify with some of these? Have you experienced some of these? Either, you don't have to mention whether it's a current experience or not, but have you experienced stress because of these types of things?
Probably all.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably all.
Yeah.
And what kind of toll would you say these types of experiences have had on you?
The typical toll I think for everybody is just it becomes monotonous. You like, let's say that you have a weekend, you celebrate Friday, you celebrate Saturday. By Saturday night, you're like, damn it, I have to prep for Sunday, all day Sunday, depressed about Monday to get to work is a pain. You get there, you sit at your desk, probably you just go through the day and you count down the days until pay. And I think that's how it is for most people, actually.
Yeah, and the thing is that this is notwithstanding your passion for what you're actually doing, right? Because you still, in some cases, you might still enjoy what you do, but you just hate where you have to do it. And also the other element is that with enough of this, sometimes you start to dislike what you're even doing. And that's a big telltale sign of burnout for you. So let's talk about this very special one that was requested. Okay, so imposter syndrome. And not a lot of people are actually aware of what imposter syndrome is. And this is actually, for those who experience it, a major source of stress. So this is where, despite how skilled and high achieving you are and how much success you've had, persons still feel feelings of inadequacy and incompetence. And you have a lot of self-doubt. You feel like you're a fraud, that you're not good enough, and you're unable to really internalize the accomplishments that you've had, no matter how successful you've been in your field. So how do you recognize if you've been facing imposter syndrome? So the characteristics are, as you see listed there. You may have thought patterns where you're telling yourself, you set very high perfectionist standards for yourself. And you may say, I must not fail, I feel like a fake, they will find out I'm phony, or I just got lucky, it's just a stroke of luck that I got this way, I just winged it, it's no big deal, anybody could do what I'm doing. So those types of thought patterns and communications are characterized by, you are characterized by those things. You have a lot of self-doubt, you may berate your own performance or downplay the importance of it. You may not be able to realistically assess your competence and skills. So if you see someone else with a portfolio like yours, you may look upon that person very favorably. But then when it comes to looking at yourself, somehow you don't have that same level of analysis. You have a fear, deep-seated fear of failing, of not meeting your own standards. Sometimes you may do things to sabotage your own success. And you may set very challenging goals for yourself and then feel disappointed when you fall short. So the consequences of something like this is that when you have a project or a presentation, you might over-prepare and spend a lot of time mulling over it, making sure that you're getting all the standards right. You may be striving for perfectionism, right? So not just progress, not just high standards, but perfectionism. You may be procrastinating because you're also avoiding it because you feel like you're not good enough to do it. You may self-sabotage. You may isolate, withdraw from other people. You might start experiencing a lot of depression, anxiety, self-esteem challenges, and generally feel very paralyzed. Now, where does this come from? And the origins are still being studied. It's a relatively new, and when I say relatively new, we're talking about within the last 50 years, relatively new phenomenon in the social sciences field. So its origins, as far as we know so far, reside in anything that influences your self-esteem and the standards that you set for yourself. So for some people, having what we call an insecure attachment style. So this is where, starting from your foundation of childhood and how you were raised, and how the level of security and esteem that you felt growing up, how that influences your self-concept. So it has its roots in self-concept and self-esteem. Also, the experiences that we've had in our life create certain belief and thought patterns. So you may have these irrational thought patterns where you may think, I'm not competent, or you might think that I am a failure, I failed at this task, and therefore that means that I will fail again. And then aside from the individual factors, there are some societal factors that really deepen and entrench imposter syndrome. So for many women in the tech industry, for example, this plays a big role, where there are stereotypical expectations of who should be in the field and what their performance is like, and who may not perform up to the standards. We've seen in other countries, minority groups also face the imposter syndrome because they've also been socialized, we've been socialized as a society to expect certain things from certain groups of persons. And then the way we are treated by others in terms of whether we are validated, whether we have been told and treated in a manner that builds our self-esteem and our self-concept. All of these things contribute to us facing this syndrome. So I'd like to get your feedback as to why do you think this exists so strongly in the tech industry? And I'll just say that with the background that there was a study done in 2018 that showed that 58%, so more than half of persons in the tech industry that were surveyed identified with imposter syndrome. And the persons who were surveyed came from high achieving companies like Facebook and Amazon, Microsoft. So why do you all think this exists so prominently?
Alex, you want to say anything?
Me, honestly, I think one of the biggest reasons that exists, at least I can only speak for myself, is that need to make sure it's done correctly the first time and every time. That's one of the main reasons why I have that kind of mentality, that kind of syndrome, and the fact that it's been instilled at the point when you do fail, that everyone gonna remember that, as opposed to the times you actually do good, nobody's remember that, ever. That's one of the main reasons why I think, at least on my part, it exists. Preach.
Joel, you look like you want to say something.
Alex have it there too, because we tend to remember our failures, right? It's the way we learn, especially in our field, right? If something doesn't work, we try again in a different way, and eventually it works, right? But we don't celebrate the win; we just remember the failures.
Yeah.
So Alex said it right on the head there, and it's something that stays with us even though we move from job to job. So in the workplace, we are progressing upwards, but in our minds, we're still remembering the failures. Like, I should apply for this promotion, but nah, I mess up so much time before. That's what everybody will remember, right? Additionally, what Vandana was saying was very important in being able to compare yourself to others. And I personally see that a lot using LinkedIn. I don't know about you, but for me, LinkedIn is just a newspaper full of success stories. Because every time I log on, I just see everybody doing absolutely fantastic stuff.
Correct.
Like, this one getting this brand new job, and that one get promoted, and this one get $1 million for doing something. And I just think like, well, shit, okay, I ain't doing anything, right? So it is a comparison effect as well too. So for me, those are some of the factors.
You actually hit the nail on the head, because one of the main reasons that's cited in the literature about the presence of the syndrome in the tech industry is exactly that social comparison and the pressure to be as engaged as others. So one of the studies showed that persons, particularly who do coding, they refer to always hearing other people talking about these big projects that they're working on, and everybody's doing these great things with coding, and you feel that internal pressure to keep up, and that if you're not keeping up, it must mean that something's wrong with you and that you're not good as them. And that essentially is social comparison, right? And that's a major source of why imposter syndrome thrives. The stereotypes is another big one. And there was something that you said at first about just before the social comparison point.
Remembering your failures.
Yes, remembering failures. Yeah, exactly that. We tend to, and this is a bias, it's a self-bias. We athletes, anybody who has the stakes are high for success, you tend to focus a lot more on your failures and think that your successes aren't being noticed. Now, in truth and in fact, many people will not remember the failures as significantly as you will. You know, so if you think about an athlete, athletes are celebrated for their successes and all the medals that they achieve. If you think of a prominent athlete, the chances of you remembering all the great things they did are higher than you remembering all the matches or the races that they lost, right? So it's a self-bias that we have, where we tend to kind of zone in more and over-focus on our failures than on our successes. And so that's a faulty way of thinking. And you will see when we start to talk about the ways that we develop healthier coping habits, a major aspect of any mental health treatment involves adjusting those maladaptive thought patterns and crafting new and more healthy ways of thinking. What was said earlier about the standards that we set for ourselves and having, you know, making sure that you get it right every time. Those things have its genesis in even childhood, in as far back as what we were told about our competence and how we were encouraged, or how we were treated when we perhaps did not get the best grades in school, you know. And so that sets up the foundation for the manner in which we treat with our success and our failures. And so sometimes as adults facing imposter syndrome, we have to kind of go back and undo some of what we've been told and how we believe in ourselves based on the messages that have been passed on over time. So, are you all aware of the 20-20-20 rule?
Nope.
No, I am always amazed at persons who, every time I do a presentation with people who are online a lot, they never know about the 20-20-20 rule. So the 20-20-20 rule is every 20 minutes, you should take a 20-second break and look 20 feet away from your screen. And this way you give your eyes a break. Okay, so we've been doing this for about 20 minutes since I started. So we're going to take 20 seconds and look away from your screen. This is part of healthy living. And focus on something 20 feet away.
Okay.
So let's go.
My wall is less than 20 feet away, so we have an issue.
So look outside.
If I take up the camera on the bike, it's a lot looking 20 feet away, right?
I think the problem with that too these days is that everybody's just glued to a screen, whether it be a TV, your phone, your tablet, you checking work stuff, you're constantly looking at emails every time you hear a bing somewhere. Yeah.
That's why this is extra important. Apart from it being a mental break, it's also critical for your eye health. So I hope that we're talking, and I'm not looking at my screen. I hope that you guys aren't looking at the screen either.
I can't help it. I think it's the anxiety. I just need to look at the screen. Where's my dog? Okay, that's more than 20 seconds.
Yeah, that's anxiety for sure, Shiva.
Yeah.
All right, so how do we know that we're excessively stressed and burnt out? So on all the realms, we can recognize mentally we're experiencing some of these negative symptoms that you see listed here. Emotionally, you're finding yourself very irritable, extremely short, and experiencing a lot of the mental health, the emotional aspect of the mental health challenges. Physically, you can relate to a lot of body aches and tension and muscle cramps. And behaviorally, you may find yourself very snappy, easy to get into conflict. You might be prone to accidents because, of course, your physical and psychological facets of your body and your mind, they are totally cramped. Decreased productivity on the job. Both you may be sleeping and eating more or less than usual. You may not feel to be engaged with others at all, and so you might find yourself isolated. You may find yourself lacking creativity, so persons who engage in music or craft or any other form of creative enterprise might find that they suddenly don't have ideas, that they can't write, they can't enjoy themselves from that perspective. And you also find yourself not performing as well. So based on that, I'd like to hear a little bit from you guys. At the beginning, we talked about this stress inventory that was circulated. I'd like to hear a little bit about what your findings were.
So I'll let these guys go first. How about Dave or Joel? You guys can go ahead.
You want to know the results?
Yeah, like can you tell me generally so the 3 dimensions of the inventory, one looked at burnout, one looked and we talked about what burnout is. The second dimension looked at depersonalization or cynicism, so where you really disconnect and become very detached. You don't identify with your own role. And then the next one is, the third dimension is reduced ability or a decrease in performance. right? So this is where you feel like you're incompetent. You're not really good enough. You're not going to achieve. So based on your scores, how did you fare in those areas? I mean, you don't have to share personally your scores, but any insights into it?
I can actually share the scores. So in section A, I believe I had moderate burnout, which was a score 20.
Right.
Section B and C, it was high level. So
Okay.
I had a 23 in section B and a 22 in section C.
Okay. Were you surprised by those findings?
No.
Did you expect them to be higher or lower?
Maybe higher.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was a pleasant surprise, I guess, for you.
Yeah, because looking at the slide that you had before there, I could identify with some of those things really well. For example, irritability. I am sometimes during the day very irritable. Shiva is laughing there because he knows this. They get the voice notes and the messages, and they can't play around people.
Right.
Because I am very calm. I am a calm person, but people don't remember that. They remember when I snap, and when I snap, I really snap. So yeah, I have actually reached a point where I honestly don't care about what I do as long as I get it done and I get out.
Mm-hmm.
That one is when it's getting pretty serious. Yeah.
Alex,
Anyone
care to share with
else?
us?
For my section A, it was 38. Section B was 32. And section C was 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
So for that section C, that's a pretty significant score, feeling like you're incompetent.
Yeah, it's going. No, one thing with me.
So, and I mean, you guys know each other's competencies. You guys are working with each other so much. We started by talking about very decorated performance in many areas. What thoughts are striking up as you kind of put those two together? Who you guys are, and yeah, how you feel.
You know, is so strange to Alex hear him say the word incompetent, because Alex is far from incompetent. Alex is the best in this field that I know personally. These guys here are nothing short of genius level. But yet, no matter how many certs we do, no matter how much experience we have, you know, I guess a lot of it too is to deal with a lot of the fight down inside, where you have to work sometimes as well. And because I mean, all of us, we have maybe 2 to 3 jobs. I have 5 jobs actually, because like I don't know how to switch off, so I just make it work for me. But even with like Joel has set up ISPs throughout the Caribbean, not just plug in a cable, but the actual ISPs throughout the Caribbean. I think Jonathan probably has the worst imposter syndrome I've ever come across in life. I don't know where he is, Johnny hiding there in the corner. But oh, hi Johnny. Yeah, but we this is why we specifically ask about imposter syndrome, because especially in IT, I mean, I know, I have a lot of friends in the banking sector who experience this as well, but in IT, it's always, as LinkedIn was saying, as Joel was saying about LinkedIn, you go on LinkedIn, and it's always some miraculous thing that somebody has just accomplished and stuff, and it's this new job and this, that, and the other. And in Trinidad as well, the economy is stagnant. Nothing is going anywhere. No one is hiring. So we all have to look outside, and then we see these people outside making this much money. I mean, if we were doing what we were doing in the US or Canada, Europe, I mean, we'd all be multi-millionaires by now. I mean, it's not that we really do it for the money, but I mean, it does play an important role. And to see these things, sometimes it is pretty demotivating. Alex, you are very far from incompetent, my brother. Please, Jonathan, please punch him or something.
Alex has been anointed by God himself, so I don't know what he is talking about.
Alex is not a penetration tester. Alex is the penetration.
So you see, the reason I asked this question is exactly for this, exactly what's coming out here, there's a definite mismatch between what we think of ourselves and what other people think of us sometimes. And when you saw a lot of the challenging of these negative thought patterns, that is the crux of being able to challenge and come out of imposter syndrome and some of the negative thought patterns that entrench stress and burnout even more. I mean, and how do we do that? We'll talk about that as we go into it. But when we have these deep-seated feelings and these thought patterns that have become part of who we are for so long, there's a need to be able to develop the skill to challenge those, to come up with irrational counter statements, and to be able to do some positive self-talk. And I know this sounds all wishy-washy for most of you guys, but this is exactly what it is that we do when we come to dealing with any mental health issue, particularly depression, anxiety, and anxiety is at the crux of imposter syndrome, right? Where you really have to challenge the negative thought patterns that create the anxiety. So we'll get into that as we start to talk about self-care and treating with toxic work environments, treating with our sources of stress, treating with imposter syndrome, all comes down to what do we do to take care of our mental, emotional, and physical health. It is not something that we force ourselves to do or something that we don't enjoy doing. It's something that refuels us, okay? So it's filling your cup up, not emptying it out. So let's talk about, we hear a lot about self-care, but let's talk about what self-care isn't, okay? So it's not things that deplete us, so you shouldn't be doing activities that end up making you feel more exhausted and more tired, and you're calling that self-care, okay? Adding more things to your to-do list, that's not self-care, okay? So if it is that you're saying, okay, well, you know what, Vandana said I need to self-care, so let me add exercise to the routine, let me add, and then you go in on there and you end up start feeling more stressed, then that's not appropriate self-care. An emergency burnout prevention plan, not self-care. New Year's resolution, okay? So that's a popular one. We said this year I'm going to do so by so, and then that dies out within the first week. That's not self-care, okay? So it's not a one-time experience. It's an ongoing practice in where you really try to build your resilience and to face the hardships and prevent burnout. It's not a quick fix, okay? So some of those negative habits that we see there might be good for a nice temporary relief, but that is not going to help you on a consistent basis cope better, okay? It's just gonna fix it in the moment. So why is it important? So when we don't self-care, we're depleted. We don't have the physical and emotional resources to be able to thrive. And notice I say thrive. It's not okay to, it's not enough to live our lives by just getting up every day and doing the things that we have to do to get by and to survive. But we're here to live and to have a fulfilling life, okay? So when we don't self-care and we're consumed by stress and burnout, we find that in the workplace, people tend to take more sick leave, less job satisfaction, exactly what we were talking about, not really caring about what you have to do, you're just getting it done. So your productivity and the fulfillment that you get from your job also goes. All right. On the other hand, we're more resilient, we're better able to handle stress, both physically and emotionally. When we self-care, it actually physiologically triggers a positive response, right? And that boosts physical health, it boosts emotional well-being. Self-care is not just important for how we cope in the workplace, but it's also important for how you function in your personal life. Okay, so when we talk about that balance, you're gonna be snappy. You're not gonna be a pleasant person to be around, and the people who care about you and the persons in your family and your friends, they need to get the best version of you. Especially when they are not the source of your stress. So taking care of yourself is also not just a responsibility to you, but it's also a responsibility to others, okay? And I sort of put in the last point there because I know the panelists on this group, lead an institute, and you guys are mentors in a way for many people in the field. And so you taking a keen interest in how you manage your stress and burnout and how you self-care is also an important facet for what you're modeling for your students. A lot of people are coming forward in cybersecurity field and will be listening to you guys and hearing what it is like and how you cope and how you thrive and not just get by is also important in terms of setting standards for the field for your students. I mean, I'm not sure if you thought about that one, but that's an important one to consider as we try to train up new people in the field as well. So we've reached 2020 again. That time went really quickly. So let's focus 20 feet away for 20 seconds.
This is a lot harder than I thought.
Yeah, it gives you a chance to quieten your mind.
Or hear the noise inside the mind. Yeah.
And you'll be surprised what comes out when you have to focus on something else.
Yeah, I realize one of my walls need painting actually.
What, you focus on a painting on your wall?
No, I realize that one of my walls need painting.
Ah, you see? All right, so let's go. What are some different types of self-care? So self-care isn't just this, fancy, you go take a day off, go by the beach. It's not, well, I want to say the ladies, but maybe the men too, hopefully, a nice little spa experience. That's not just self-care. Self-care falls within all of these realms. Any area in which we can experience stress, there's opportunity for self-care. So emotional, any activities that help you to process your emotions. So whether that means seeking formal help from a professional, writing out your feelings, art, playing music, going to the movies, saying no, maintaining your personal boundaries, and we'll talk about that. Practicing self-compassion, so even being gentle on yourself. And earlier when we heard, I think it was Alex talking about the perfectionist standards, that sometimes comes along with very negative things that we internalize and we say to ourselves without even being consciously aware of it. So being kind and gentle to ourselves and giving ourselves grace, the same grace that we would like others to give to us, sometimes we need to give it to ourselves. Practical types of self-care. So any tasks that help you sort of manage the day-to-day logistical chaos that you might have. So to-do lists, right? Creating a budget, organizing your desk, organizing your closet, decluttering your work environment, staying on top of your laundry. These are things that sometimes create a lot of day-to-day hassles for us, right? So setting up ways that you can do those things also help to bring some measure of control and organization. Things that improve your physical health. So any forms of exercise or eating healthy, trying to get some sleep. Mental self-care. So anything that stimulates the brain, okay, and stimulates the intellect. So there's some examples there, but you might think about some interesting things that work for you. Social activities that nurture, your relationships with others. So making time for your family and your friends. Maybe it might be a drive down to the beach. You can't go to the beach right now, but you might pass by the beach with your friends. Those things help to deepen your relationships with others, and personal and social connection is actually a very effective way to buffer stress. Despite how sometimes when we're stressed, we don't want to. We feel like we want to pull away and we want to withdraw. It's actually connecting with others is also very helpful in managing your stress levels. So professional self-care also, this ties in very much to what do we do in a toxic work environment, and we'll talk about that. Spiritual activities. So if you believe in a higher power, then whatever nurtures that sense of spirituality can also be a form of self-care. And of course, financial self-care. If you are having a lot of stress linked to your financial situation, then setting up things where you can manage your finances better, and also is another form of self-care. So I want you to broaden, the idea behind this is to broaden your thinking about self-care and stress management, away from just thinking about how do I de-stress, how do I just relax. It's not just about that, but it's also about finding ways to reduce your stress levels in all areas of your life. So here's the big one: surviving a toxic work environment. If you've established, and we've talked about how we identify that a work environment is toxic. If you've identified that this is a toxic place, and I don't know that I can survive in this place, your first main question is, can I leave? Is quitting an option now? And this is not a simple question by any means. It's easy for people to say, the place is toxic, so why don't you just leave? Why are you staying there? But there are many considerations, right? So you might consider financially, do you have the capability to leave? In terms of other options out there, maybe I heard you all mentioning that the opportunities abroad are much more lucrative. But if you quit and you go, do you have the capability right now to leave based on everything else that's happening in your life? So that's a fundamental question to begin with. Is quitting this place an option right now? And if the answer to that is yes, then by all means, yes. If the answer to that is no, then you have to set up your survival plan. And so the first thing is boundaries. Boundaries are critical, and they are perhaps one of the only things in working in a toxic work environment that is fully within your control. You won't have control over the demands that are placed on you. You don't have control over the people and their toxic behaviors. But what you have control over is what sort of boundaries you set for yourself. So by that I mean, are there particular types of conversations that you will allow yourself to be engaged in or not? If somebody is speaking to you in a particular way, do you allow that, or do you retaliate? Or do you stop it before it even escalates? Are there work demands that are being placed upon you that you can come forward and say, this X, Y, or Z is what I can do at this point in time, and this is what I'll have to leave for tomorrow to do? Or do you allow yourself to take it all on and you don't know when to stop? Okay, so these are just some examples of personal boundaries that you have to set for yourself. Earlier we spoke about being in this pandemic and not really knowing where work and home life begins and ends. And so that's another important area for setting boundaries. Is it that you set for yourself, look, my work day is going to be 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And so when I get up in the morning, this is my routine for in my personal life. I start work just as if I was going to the office at 8 a.m. and I finish work at 4 p.m. and I close it off. And having a designated workspace is sometimes also very important, so that you close it, you leave it, and you go to your regular home life after that. These are some examples. I'm not saying that this will apply to everyone. You have to examine what works for you. But setting up boundaries, absolutely critical if you're working in a toxic work environment. Avoid taking work home. I can't see you guys on my screen. I don't know how many of you guys are rolling your eyes or smirking at this one, right? But I know this is very difficult in many work environments. And again, you have to make a decision as to what you can take on and what you can't. And if you're working in a toxic work environment, the temptation to meet the demands, the unreasonable demands that are being placed on you, the temptation to continually work and get it done will lead you to doing this. But you have to come to a point where you make a decision as to, this is what I'm going to do now, and this is where I'm stopping. There has to be a point for your own mental health and physical health where you sign off. So saying no to the people, the tasks, the calls that you can't take on board. And we spoke about this in relation to the boundaries, okay? Taking your leave, guys. Your leave is your entitlement. It's important for you to take your leave. And if you're working in an environment where you're not being allowed to take your leave, then this is a major problem. Okay, there is no reward that is worth it for you to save up all your vacation leave and not take it, or to not take a sick day when you are sick. Your leave is there for you for a reason, and not taking your leave leads inevitably to burnout and lack of productivity. So please take your vacation leave, go on a vacation, and enjoy your time off.
Also, sick days can be mental health days. I don't see enough people taking sick days just to disconnect. It's something that's necessary. Something that's necessary. And a lot of people don't realize that sick days also mean sick from mental health.
Absolutely. And in some companies, even toxic ones, there may be mental health days, and it might be frowned upon if you take a mental health leave. And I'm talking about that as a designated type of leave, right? But you know what? It doesn't matter how it's viewed. Your mental health is your priority and nobody else's. So, well, if you need a mental health day, whether it is a mental health leave day or a sick leave day to be able to take care of yourself, that is absolutely priority. So communication. In toxic work environments, we know that the communication pattern is extremely dysfunctional many times, and there may be a lot of toxic interpersonal styles. It is your duty, if you've developed and made a decision to survive in this work environment, then it's also your duty to be able to communicate in a way that addresses it. And I know that if the communication pattern is one of anger and aggression and very unproductive, then it's very difficult for you to have a very constructive conversation. But nothing good comes out of reciprocating in like manner. It's just going to deepen the toxicity, deepen your sense of dissatisfaction. Okay, so really being able to go up to the person, approach the person or persons who are communicating in a way, or there's been a misunderstanding or some form of toxic communication, to really address it head on. And this might be very difficult for persons who do not have a confrontational or even an assertive personality, as well as if the persons that you have to communicate with, the toxicity really resides deep, then this is going to be a challenge. So be warned that if you have to address, and you should by all means address misunderstandings and toxic behaviors, that is part of setting boundaries for yourself and letting people know what you will stand for and what you won't, then be warned that this can go either way, and you have to be prepared for the particular direction that it might go in. But your responsibility is to yourself, and part of that is also being mature and professional about the conversation on your end. Bring positivity to your workspace. So this can be, if you have an office space, you might play some music that you like. You might, have pictures of your family if that makes you happy, or you might have some particular slogans maybe on your wall, on your desk, whatever helps you to create that sense of zen to help you cope in your work environment. That's also useful. Make a plan. So maybe that means that, look, I have to stay in this environment for now, but here, this is my exit plan. And so you craft what that plan looks like for you. Maybe you might say, I might work here for this particular period of time, and after this particular time, this is what I'm going to move on to. Or you might be working on your side hustle, so that you're building up yourself in the meantime, so that when you're ready to leave, you have something to fall back on. Find healthy coping mechanisms, and we'll talk about that in our next few slides, some different avenues and outlets that you can release that stress. And here's a big one to address imposter syndrome. Know your value. We tend to rely a lot on external feedback and external validation to really tell us how good we are at a job, or to reinforce our sense of self-esteem. But none of that will be effective unless intrinsically you know what your value is. You know what your skills are, you know your own self-worth is high, and that the messages that you tell yourself, we spoke about positive self-talk, the messages that you tell yourself are positive messages. If you don't know your value, then you will fall for anything, and any toxic behavior in the work environment is going to penetrate that low sense of self-worth. So this is absolutely critical in being able to affirm yourself. So as we're on that point then, coping with imposter syndrome. So the first thing is know that this exists. Many people might be hearing about imposter syndrome for the first time today, and hopefully it's giving you a sense of relief to know that you're not alone out there. There's a name, there's a label for these feelings, okay? And so know what it is and acknowledge that there's a name for these feelings and you're not alone, right? Just knowing that sometimes is helpful. I remember speaking with Shiva about this, and he was telling me that, you know, knowing that you guys kind of all feel this way, it is in a way helpful, because you're almost like a community, like, okay, I'm not alone in this, you know, like it's not just me. And so knowing that sometimes is useful. Have open dialogues with persons who support you. So whether it's your circle of friends, or you have a family members who are good listeners, who you can just ventilate your feelings to, discuss your feelings, being able to put your feelings out there and not just internalize them and feel like, you know, you're this failure on your own, or you're not good enough on your own. Just being able to talk it out is useful. Separating feelings from fact. Okay, so it's normal for all of us to not be 100% great all the time. But when you start seeing yourself thinking or hearing yourself saying, I didn't do well at this task, which means that I'm a failure, or I'm feeling useless, I can't solve this problem, so that must mean I'm a waste of time. You need to recognize that you might feel a particular way, but that does not translate into the reality. All of us feel different ways, but if we characterize ourselves based on our feelings all the time, then that's a never-ending loop of negativity that we're just going to get caught up in. So separate feelings from fact. I might not be good at this task, I may not feel competent at this task right now, but that does not mean that I am incompetent. There are so many other scenarios and tasks that I have been successful at. Okay, so that's a very important distinction to make. And that falls just into what we were talking about, that mental script and the need. We all have mental models of ourselves. And you might find yourself getting into a loop of negative thoughts and negative self-talk. So the important thing is to notice those thoughts. Sometimes they happen very unconsciously. And if you've been coping and dealing with this for a long time, chances are you may not even recognize when they're unconsciously governing the way that you think and act. So pay attention. Pay attention to the thoughts and the messages that you're giving yourself. And if you find yourself saying things like, I'm not good enough to do this, I don't have as much experience as everybody else, I don't deserve this job. You go to a conference and you say, oh my God, everybody here is brilliant and I'm not. Try rewriting those and coming up with rational counter statements to those. I deserve this job because I worked hard for it. They picked me. They didn't pick me out of a basket. They picked me here because I am best suited for this job. I'm doing my best. I have what it takes. You go to that conference, instead of saying everybody here is brilliant and I'm the only waste of time, you say something like, wow, everybody's brilliant here. There's so much I'm going to learn. These are just some examples of how you really have to challenge yourself to change that script that we say to ourselves. Before I go to the next slide, I want to hear from you guys on this point.
Yeah, so I'm gonna leave Alex for this one. Face.
I like actually looking.
Oh yeah, nice try. Dale, you go ahead. I have too much to say. Well, Alex, I don't know if you want to say something first.
No.
I have plenty to say on that one.
Yeah, Johnny has something to say.
That's,
Yeah, Take it away, Johnny.
Applied to me a lot, especially, well, you know, I had like 6 or 5 interviews before for pretty big companies and get shot down by all. Then to get picked up by EI, I was like a bit sus. And yeah, I know that feeling. That's something that I got shot down by pretty much everybody else. All the big players.
I think I remember I had to like counsel Johnny for like a few days every time he would apply for something and say, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I'm good enough for that. But I keep reminding Johnny, you teach some very high-end courses at CFSI. It's not just enough to know it. The amount that you have to know to teach this stuff is hell impressive. I constantly have to remind all these guys, but I think that knowing your value, Vanna, you're right. I would say, you know, a lot of it has to do with the way that we grow up and society. And, you know, in Trinidad, everything is about what school you passed for. I mean, you know, great, you passed for first choice for the great schools, that's awesome. But somehow, even if you didn't pass for that, you go through this with, oh, well, you know, it's just as good, and you come out learning X, Y, Z. And all of us, the guys, we all had this chat the other day. You know, it's like everything that we learned in high school, pretty much none of it is applicable to what we do, if at all, even down to paying taxes or something like that. It was just a way to socialize, grow up, and we kind of have the view and impression that school in general, high school especially, is just really to create a good employee sometimes, because after that is where you kind of find yourself, hopefully. If you see something you're good at and you have the support or even the belief in yourself to actually follow through with it. So I usually have to keep these guys in check here and let them know, is like, listen, you guys, you're pretty much valued, because I really can't pay these guys what they're worth, which is why I try to treat them a little bit nice now and then. But I don't even mind myself, because even in the scores there, I'm proud I made the highest scores, which is probably the worst thing ever, because I think the
There's
section
no prize for that.
41 or something like that. Yeah, so guys, my depression and anxiety wins here. But yeah, even with the master's degree, with writing 3 books, with I don't know how many certifications I have, working for international companies, it is always still there. The question about how much am I worth, how much do I value myself, it always comes up. But you were right, because we are each other's support system in here. We're very fortunate to have each other. I don't know, Dave, you have anything to add to that?
Well, is about what Joel spoke about earlier, the social comparison. People always posting the success stories on LinkedIn, but they don't post the failures. And one thing I always tell myself is, for every one success story you see, there might be 10 failures behind it. They might actually be failing more than me.
Correct.
So yeah, I try my best not to let it get to me, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't. And then the expectations from young, I mean, everybody, especially in the kind of dynamic I grew up in, yeah, you need to pass for a good school. Yeah, you need to get good CXC grades. Yeah, you need to have a degree. Oh, you need to be a doctor. You need to be a lawyer. You need to be this and that. And that putting that kind of pressure on a child is,
yeah.
I mean, that is grooming you for stress from small.
Yeah, absolutely. And I work, aside from this, I work in child protection, and I can't tell you guys how much parenting and our upbringing really sets the tone for our adult feelings and behavior. And so, I mean, we can't do anything about that now as adults. We have the past that we have, we've been raised the way that we have. But now the onus is really on us to be able to take the reins and recognize where the problems are now and try to address it. You know, so this rewriting of the mental script and separating feelings from fact. Out of everything else I will share with you about coping with imposter syndrome, these are 2 of the main things. And I'm listening to Shiva saying that how many times he has said and reassured the other guys about their competence and their brilliance. And I'm sure if I was to ask Shiva about his own experience of imposter syndrome, that same skill that you use to encourage others and to reassure them of their value, It might be how much of that he's able to do for himself. And that this is a question for all of us. If you had to assess somebody with the same level of qualifications and skills and successes as you may very well be able to go to town and being able to talk about how excellent they are. And so we have to use the same yardstick that we use to measure objectively and apply it to ourselves.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about intolerance for failures and mistakes. And one of the major things is instead of, yes, ruminating a bit and focusing on the mistake or the failure is important, but it's important only insofar as we use it as an opportunity to analyze what we did wrong or where we went wrong and gain the learning value from the loss so that we can move forward. I use the example of treat it like a sport. When athletes, they compete at an international level and they don't get the results that they do, they watch those videos over and over and over again, just so that they can analyze every aspect of the race and they can see where they went wrong so that they learn from there, right? Similarly, and by no means I'm endorsing kind of sitting and going over and over and over and over your failure. But the point is to use it as an opportunity to analyze where did I go wrong or what can I do better, and use it to improve, not to instead sit down with it and say, well, you see, you make that mistake, you fail, you must be a failure. You have to use it for the positive value that it offers. Okay, we spoke about affirming yourself, and so really breaking the cycle of dismissing validation and really giving yourself the credit and you making that intentional effort to recognize your own value. Okay, remind yourself of your training and draw from your past experiences of success. Okay, so I don't have to tell you guys and the expertise that you guys have, right? So when you go to a training session or you're in a room with a bunch of other people, you're there because you were chosen. In this room of persons, if I'm the speaker because I'm the expert in this room on this, you know? So those are the kinds of things to kind of reaffirm yourself and to remind yourself of your value. We spoke about setting boundaries and making a plan. Processing sometimes some of the scenarios that you might encounter, kind of planning beforehand how you're going to treat with it, will help you to sort of deal with those emotions rather than allowing them to take it over in the heat of the moment. So for example, you might think through some scenarios that, you know, if I do this job and my boss isn't satisfied with my work, you know, what would I do? Instead of being confronted suddenly with a situation and then you're overwhelmed by the feelings of incompetence or that you made a mistake, or, you know, if you work in an environment where there's a lot of intergenerational conflict, so maybe a lot of older people versus a lot of younger people, like whole Gen X, Gen Y thing, then, you know, you might be faced with a lot of, sometimes I can share this from my personal experience. When I first started off working, this was one, I came out of school probably 23 years with a master's degree, and you come into a work environment with persons who've been in the field for 20 years and they're looking down at this little girl just come out of university and feel like, you know, you're taking up a big position. And there are always these insidious ways to remind you that you're new to the field and you're green and I am the seasoned worker in the area. And so sort of really prepping yourself mentally for those scenarios where somebody will confront you with that type of thing that can really make you feel, you know, less than capable, will really help you to prepare and to deal with those emotions so that when it happens, you don't just sink down into your inner self and be like, yeah, I really am not worth it at all. Yeah. Visualize your success. So again, see where you want to go and see yourself as succeeding at a particular thing. You have to do a presentation. It's an international conference. you picture yourself beforehand speaking to the participants, succeeding, people coming up to you afterwards and congratulating you. Compare that to then imagining that it's all going poorly. You know, the difference that communicates to you, to your self-esteem when you visualize your success, as opposed to you preempt your success by imagining your failure. You really have to keep your eye on the outcome and imagine yourself being successful. Again, athletes do this all the time. This is part of sports psychology, where you really kind of pump them up and help them try to imagine themselves being victorious in the race, so that they eyes on the prize. Okay. Say yes to opportunities that showcase your skills. You don't have to wait until you feel like you're 100% confident to put yourself out there. Sometimes you have to put yourself out there and take the risk and see yourself succeed to allow your confidence to build. Okay, so leaning into your core competencies can really help to build that sense of self-esteem. I remember when I first started doing presentations, I didn't have a lot of experience with facilitation and workshops, and somebody told me, "Nah, man, you could do this. You know, when you're talking to us in a smaller group, you're really good at this. I think you could do this on a bigger scale." And the first time I had to do it, I was so nervous, right? And then, but I did it. I tried it. I did it, and I found myself really enjoying it. And since then, I've done countless of presentations and workshops. But I can't say that I'm 100% confident up to now, depending on the topic. But really giving yourself the opportunity to showcase. And the more that you do it, and the more accolades you collect, the better and the more confident you feel about doing it. Okay. Finding a mentor. So, you know, at the beginning, Shiva put it out there that, you know, WhatsApp him, give him a call, talk about something if you have a concern. It's really hard, especially for persons. It's hard enough being in the field for umpteen years and you still struggle with imposter syndrome, much less for persons, you know, who are really young in the field and now starting up and don't exactly work in the best of environments that give them that sense of validation. So if you can't find a mentor in your field or somebody that can really give you the encouragement, help you navigate the challenges, that is also a great way to cope with this syndrome. And of course, if you've done all of these things and you find that you still can't manage on your own, you're still finding that you're having a lot of strong feelings of self-doubt and anxiety and depression and really having a difficulty coping with your feelings, then of course, by all means, seek out professional intervention. So I've been talking, I think, for 25 minutes now, so we're going to take another 20-20-20 break.
Sure. So I have an awesome coping mechanism when I'm at home and working at home. I have my dog right by my feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's actually really therapeutic.
you know, by chance, if you could register dogs to be like emotional support dogs and just be able to carry them everywhere.
You have to register them to do that?
Like, you know, if you have to go to work or something.
All right, so let's get into some general self-care and stress management techniques. Now, these are just some examples. You have to know what appeals to you on this list and perhaps come up with some of your own creative ways. Okay, so these are just some examples of things that work for different people, but these are some ways that you can engage your senses, develop a healthier physical state, also ways that you can quieten your mind. You can find that support. See, playing with pets, there is a sense of emotional support. Engaging in any activities that nurture your creativity and give you that sense of replenishment. Anything that really falls along that line is important for self-care. So it's important to cut out the things that add to your stress or the unhealthy habits. Okay, again, some of these things might give you temporary relief, but we have to think about a long-term and ongoing stress management. Okay, Just kind of at this point about watching news regularly and being constantly connected to digital and devices. I'm just going to touch on that for a moment because we're living in a pandemic and hearing news all the time of the number of deaths, how many people worldwide are dying, and also apart from the pandemic, other crime news and all of these things. These things are very insidiously get integrated into our psyche and can be very stressful. Okay, so you want to be careful of your media consumption, and of course, being constantly connected to the digital devices takes away that time to really disconnect and to reconnect to something else. So I know this is a tough one. It's tough for me in particular, I can say, but sometimes finding some of those other activities that you can do give you that sense of reprieve. Okay, taking time for yourself, busy, satisfying your boss, satisfying your stakeholders, satisfying the customers, satisfying the students, satisfying your family, satisfying your friends, and then you forget about yourself. Okay, so really consciously taking some time to focus on what do you need and take some time for you as well. And engaging in some mindfulness exercises, which we will do at the end of this session, is another way of really being able to disconnect and relax. So here's some specific things now that you can look at and pay attention to now that we're in a pandemic, okay? And I'm saying this because the pandemic is a huge source of stress for a lot of people from multiple ways. Many people's general coping strategies have been curtailed. You can't go to the beach. Well, now gyms have reopened, but many people still don't want to go because you're concerned about risk of exposure. You might have gone to the movies, you might have traveled, you might have gone to the restaurant, sports, all of these things that people would typically use to cope are no longer available. So that's a big source of stress for a lot of people. Not to mention, as I spoke about earlier, being so focused on panic and worry about if you will get COVID-19 or if persons that are dear to you will contract it. So it's a very stressful time. So just to focus specifically, during this period of time, as well as all of the other times, it's important to focus on healthy mindsets and behaviors. We pay attention to our body. You know, we want to exercise, we want to be able to eat well, but we don't always think about how do we keep our mindsets and our behaviors healthy. So we spoke about being very realistic and compassionate with yourself as you create new norms, okay? In this new environment, if you have other obligations, particularly persons who might be parents and you're working as well and you have to manage children in the home while you're working from home and you're doing online schooling with your kids, that's pretty difficult. Figure out your stressors, break them down into more manageable chunks. Sometimes we think about our stress as a big cloud of stress, but when you start to actually break it down into the tangible tasks, those become more manageable. I mentioned the sense of connection being an important part of coping. So really prioritize, if you have a positive social support circle, really prioritize those positive interactions. Become aware of the messages and the stories you are telling yourself. And if you take nothing away from today's session, I really want you to take this away. Really do some meta-analysis. What are the words, the messages, the stories, the self-talk that you have for yourself? And really strive to analyze those and come up with a positive self-talk habit. Try to focus during this time on positive emotions. It's so easy to just get caught up in fear and anxiety and worry and panic. But it's important to really be able to focus and intentionally and deliberately will yourself to today I'm going to be happy. Today I'm going to be positive. Today I'm going, today I'm going to be hopeful. I'm going into this work environment. I know it's going to be very stressful, but I'm going to do my best today. So really willing and deliberately bringing forward those positive emotions. We spoke about the mental and physical breaks already. Focusing on solutions instead of problems. sometimes we're so focused on the issue that we have to solve, we get caught up in this loop of problem-oriented thinking, and we really have to switch that into solution-focused thinking. Okay, so this is the problem. Instead of listing out the 10 things that are surrounding this issue that we have to deal with, let's think, okay, it is a problem, let's move on here. Now, how do we solve it? Yeah, reframing. This is what we talked about, rewriting the mental script. Look for meaning and lessons and opportunities and challenges. When we face challenges, it's easy to get bogged down into the challenge, you know, and why this is so hard and why I always have to face these problems all the time. Look for what is the lesson in this for me? You know, is there something purposeful? Is there something meaningful that I'm supposed to gather from this challenge? And really try to look deeper than the problem. Okay. Gratitude. So there's actually some new science, neuroscience, that shows that it is physiologically impossible for your brain to simultaneously be thankful and stressed at the same time. And so finding ways every single day to focus on what you have to be grateful for is an extremely effective way of coping with stress. And it sounds simple, right? But you'd actually find it might be more challenging than you think, because we're so primed to thinking about the challenges that we have in our lives. And it's simple. Maybe every day you begin your day by saying, these are the 3 things I'm grateful for today. I'm grateful that I woke up. I'm grateful that I have breakfast to eat. And I'm grateful that I at least get 2 hours sleep last night. Right? It's as simple as that. Or at the end of the day, you reflect upon your day and you focus on 3 things that I'm grateful for. Right? Whatever works for you. You know, some people, there's a little thing that I've tried to inculcate in my home that I always share in my presentations, because I find that it's such a lovely ritual that you can do with your families as well. Every week, one thing, there must be one thing that you were grateful for this week, right? Even if it meant that I survived the week, right? But make it tangible. One thing that you're grateful for this week. And we have a little jar, and I encourage everybody, write it down and throw it in the jar. And at the end of the year, and you don't have to do it this way, right? This is the way I encourage it at home. At the end of the year, you open this jar and you read through all these little, what seemed like insignificant things. At the end of December, you can't remember this thing that you're referring to in this random week in January that you are grateful for. But doing this exercise and looking back upon it is so helpful to realize all of these wonderful things that you just forgot about that you were grateful for over the course of the year. You don't have to do it by year. You could do that every month if you want, at the end of the week if you want. But really focusing on the things that you have to be grateful for takes away from thinking in a stress-inducing manner. Finding opportunities for fun and laughter, and I know that's not short at all in this group. Connecting with colleagues, and I know there's we spoke about this as well. Really help finding people, whether it's colleagues, family, friends, whatever your network is, to really be able to connect and obtain that sense of social support and belongingness and identity that really gives you that sense of coping and mitigates against stress. We spoke about boundaries to no end, but in the pandemic, this is particularly important. Physically creating a boundary between your workspace and your home space, and mentally creating the boundaries as well, so that you separate your home life from your work life. Okay. So to truly thrive in a high stress environment, we need to balance practical problem-solving strategies with healthy, emotional-based self-care routines. So something just to sum up, that we need to take a very holistic perspective when we think about self-care and stress management. It's the day-to-day things that we do, as well as some of those higher order things we do to self-care. And as I mentioned, if you've been doing all of these things and you still find yourself struggling quite a bit, seek professional assistance. How to know when you need to do this? you find that you're experiencing moderate to high levels of distress. The low mood, the anxiety is extremely intense, prolonged. You're also experiencing a sense of helplessness, hopelessness, despair, and any other mental health symptoms. You find that these are interfering with your functioning in multiple areas of your life. And you need to get some assistance with coping in a healthier way. This is the time to seek professional intervention. There is no shame. Contrary, I know mental health has a big stigma attached to it globally. There's absolutely no shame in seeking professional intervention. You would not sit with a broken limb or with a chronic disease and not seek treatment. You wouldn't blink before thinking to go to the doctor for that. There is no difference when it comes to mental health. And in fact, leaving mental health unchecked has far more dire consequences on your holistic well-being than just even a physical ailment. It's actually a sign of strength for you to recognize that you are not invincible, that you are not coping well, and that the consequences for your lack of coping, not just for you, but for your loved ones as well. It's a sign of strength for you to reach out and seek help for that. Okay. So based on that, I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to complete the self-care self-assessment tool.
Yeah, we went through it.
Yeah. And did you find that you were able to identify anything that you were doing?
Mostly what we're probably not doing, which is what. And
yeah.
It just ultimately boiled down for all of us that we probably leading some pretty unhealthy lifestyles, not necessarily by the eating and stuff, but like everything that you said, you know, carrying the work home and focusing on everything except maybe what we should and not being able to take a break. Yeah, that's I think I probably need to print a couple of those sheets and do one every week to see if I have some sort of improvement or something.
Yeah. Very interesting how you said, you know, the worksheet actually showed you the things that you're not doing, because maybe you weren't identifying with any of the or many of the activities on the worksheet, and that's also good insight. You know, that is a good way for you to be able to identify, you know, what are my self-care routines and where do I need to develop. Okay, so I hope that you guys will take some time to go through it for all the persons on this call and to really see what works for you and probably gain some ideas from it as to the things that you can start to practice and you'd like to try out. So based on that, you know, you're talking about printing out the sheets. I actually do have something that I will share to be circulated with all the participants. And this is called your Individualized Energy Plan. Okay, it's just a one-pager. I mean, you don't have to do it on the one-pager, but it's really about coming up with a commitment. What am I going to do and commit to in terms of my self-care? So the first thing is, what are 3 things that I do to self-care right now? And I hope that you can identify at least 3 things, okay? What are some new self-care practices that I would like to implement? And you list at least 3 things that you think you want to start trying to do. What might be some of the obstacles or barriers to implementing these things? Quite frequently, people say time, they don't have the time to do it, or they don't have the emotional will to do it. So what are your barriers? And what are the solutions that you plan to implement to address each of those barriers? What is my accountability plan? So you might say, okay, so what am I going to do to make sure that I get this thing done? So maybe you'll say that I want to take a nice scenic drive at least once a month. Maybe that's a new self-care practice that you want to implement. So my accountability plan is that at least once a month, I'm going to gather up with my friends and we're going to go for a nice scenic drive, at least maybe on the 4th Sunday of every month, right? And then select 1 or 2 of these new self-care activities and really support it by, you know, your commitment. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this done by, I'm going to ensure that I get this done by doing so and so, you know, so really driving home. And I have some prompts in the worksheet that can help you craft these statements for yourself. And I know the tendency to think about oh, this sounds nice and airy-fairy, but unless you commit to your own mental health and physical health, then there's nobody else who can really help you. Okay. Again, we have to focus on the things that we can't control, and you are only in control of yourself. Okay? So it's really important to be able to develop your own plan that works for you. All right. So I have a little activity here that I wanted to end up my presentation with. And so I want to just probably for the next few minutes before we do this, open up the floor for anybody to give any feedback or share any challenges. Because I'd really like us to do this towards the end.
Do anything you want to discuss about, possibly relating to some of those voice notes you've been sending me this week?
What voice notes?
Not really. The only possible thing is figuring out how not to take up the laptop and fling it at somebody's head.
I think he's just being polite about that. I think so I have this friend, right, who reached out to me and had a very stressful time with a past boss, who's no longer with them, thankfully, I guess. But like basically the long and short of it was that they had a lot of issues where they had to take care of family members and stuff. And when they reached out to bosses, and I know would have been fine, I guess, from the bosses, but there was absolutely nothing. There was no reply to the request for emails, mostly because I guess the bosses were scared to contact the higher ups or something like that. But basically, I think after things like that, where you realize that, you know, for people in workplaces, for your bosses not to care about you is one thing, but for them to blatantly show that you don't matter, your time doesn't matter, your family doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not sure how somebody is supposed to recover from something like that. And I mean, yes, it's always an issue of, you know, if they go to work every day, I shouldn't be here, I should quit, I should go home, this is just pure misery. But if the option, I mean, yeah, maybe the option might be to quit, maybe the option might not. But for those of us who, or in the audience in particular, who would not have that option, I mean, how do you go about coming back from something like that, where you absolutely just do not care about these people or this place, and there's even some sort of hatred for where you are inside of there?
I'll share a personal experience to be able to respond to that question. So I mentioned I work in child protection, and I've been working in child protection for 9 years, and that's a really long time to work in child protection when day in, day out, all you deal with is child abuse and the most atrocious acts that have been committed on children by people who care about them, purportedly. And on top of that, working in an environment that's, you know, very bureaucratic, has extremely high liability, so it's very, very stressful. And there was a time about 3 years ago that I was holding down two managerial portfolios. And one of them was for an environment in which it's like a safe house. So you can imagine the level of stress and liability involved in there. And the year before, I had a client that I lost to suicide. It was extremely difficult to deal with. And I found myself coming to the point where I was so burnt out that I was just going to work, doing what I had to do, doing bare minimum, and getting by. But when I recognized that there was a major problem was when I found myself not caring enough about what was happening to the kids. And it took me a long while to be brave enough to say that, because that's, of course, the worst thing that you think you could do, really, or the worst state that you could reach in as a child protection worker. So I'd get reports about something happening, and I'd be like, okay, and you deal with it and you move on. But the drive and the passion to do it wasn't there. At the time as well, we had a very, very challenging time with leadership in the company, and similar things to what you are describing with that individual. And so a very blatant disregard for well-being, and the burden of responsibility falling upon me as the manager of the facility where a child died. And I had to take a break. It was the first time in my career that I took a lengthy break, and I went to EAP, Employee Assistance Program. And I had to process a lot of what I was going through with a therapist. A lot of my own feelings of incompetence and blame and self-doubt. And that was coincidentally, around that time, I also had to travel on another opportunity, and it wasn't work related. And I ended up spending about an entire month in 3 countries doing different things. And so my brain totally disconnected from work. That, together with therapy, is the only thing that brought me back to a point after that, to where I needed to be. And so I'm saying all of that to say that if you cannot leave and you have to stay, then you have to develop the survival plan.
Right.
The survival plan for me involved setting boundaries. It was very, very hard. When you're working in a safe house, you're going to get calls all hours of the night about crises that are happening and things that require emergency action. I made a decision at that point in time, and I put in my request to say that I can only manage one portfolio, and the other one I was even being paid to do. I was just being asked to assist with. So I said, this is the one that I'm going to do, and I'm not going to be able to take on the other one. I was begged, I was negotiated with in all sorts of ways, and I said, there's nothing anybody can offer me to be able to take that on board. So 1, being very assertive about the boundaries that I set for myself. 2, that was the first time in my career that I began to set up boundaries about, I will not take calls unless I know a child must be dying, or there must be some significant thing that you absolutely need my feedback for, but I'm not going to take those calls after hours. My emails, I manage them in a particular way so that I'm not always responding to emails at all hours. If somebody calls me and they said, are you available? And I would tell them straight up, no, I'm not available right now. Is it something that can wait for tomorrow? You don't have to be mean, you don't have to be disrespectful about it, but I had to set up the boundaries for myself. I also had to recognize that nobody else in this environment is going to look after my well-being than me. And if clearly, as your friend or colleague indicated, it is very obvious that there is not a regard for the person's personal life, then you have to move to suit as well. Nobody is indispensable. And that's an important part of recognizing your role in a toxic work environment. You want to give your best, but the minute something happens to you, you're going to be replaced. Maybe you may not be perfectly replaced with the exact skill set that you have, but they're going to find another way to get the job done. They will. So are you going to kill yourself doing it when you can be replaced, and you will be replaced? And the only place that you cannot be replaced is in your family.
Perfectly said. Yeah. I think
it's
it's a lot of
making a decision. Yeah.
Dale, Joel?
Yeah, so
Take your time, take your time.
I can talk about shit for a whole day, so I'll keep it as minimal as I can. But yes, all relevant points. Too often, these points resonate with everyone and hit home for different people in different ways. Because when you're looking to see what's happening with the industry, ICT workers in particular are facing a particular unique set of challenges. Not only are we the guys that have to keep the lights on and keep the engine running, but we have to do so in a very different way than we did before. A lot of it came with new challenges and complications. We're expected to perform beyond the scope of what was expected of us before. And not only that, we have to grow in the organization and out of the organization as well. So it does come with challenges that you said, Vandana. And I believe everyone on this call, it resonates with them in a particular way. A lot of us have families, as you mentioned, which poses a different set of challenges. I have a son, and I can tell you firsthand that it is very difficult having to balance all the roles. Quite often I'm on meetings and I have to stop talking because my son is destroying something on the side of the room there, right? Or sometimes my wife has to go to work, and I have to balance being on a call and not burning down the house because I forgot something on the stove. And all these things just compound the stress factors that we have. Sometimes you just want to take off everything and scream like they want to take out the laptop and just pelt it against the wall and mash up everything, right? I actually mash up a laptop. So it becomes an issue, right? It's something that manifests into a physical form. It's no longer something in your mind. It becomes a physical transmission of what it is you're feeling. And it does. Sometimes it gets to the point where it affects even not only you as in terms of your mental state, but it'll affect those around you, as you mentioned, right? It'll cross into your family life, and it'll affect those that you have to interact with on a daily basis. And sometimes the day gets so stressful that, and I know every single person that is on this panel here, and even the ones who are listening in the audience, sometimes the day gets so stressful that you're lying down in your bed and your eyes are like this, and you look at the clock, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and you just can't fall asleep because your mind is running through 500 different things that you need to get done. And you're gonna wake up again at 5 o'clock just to start the cycle all over again. So yeah, the need to disconnect is definitely a requirement, but more importantly, the need to just sometimes book a couple days if your calendar allows it. But everything that you said here today is definitely has been eye-opening, right? The challenges that we all facing, it's definitely something that we need to pay more attention to. The industry that we are working in does not help at all, because as we move forward, and it is something that I have been very vocal about, all the guys that in our group know that I like to raise these topics and I like to point fingers, but we won't point fingers here. But too often we are seeing, and the trend in the information and communications industry is to ask employees to do so much more with less, right? And not only do more with less, but you are being compensated less. And more I am seeing advertisements coming out for vacancies in ICT and in the information technology and the information security fields, and the salaries are growing smaller and smaller every day. I took a picture and I sent it to the guys in the group recently. There was a vacancy for a position for a manager that was paying like $16,000 a month or $12,000 a month or something like that. I could go and mix concrete for more money than that, right? So while and this is on top of the mountain of challenges that we're facing in the industry as professionals. So you really brought up a whole ton of great points and something that we could all resonate with. And I hope that the takeaway from this is that we pay attention to the things that we have to face in our professional and personal lives, and adjust it accordingly.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks for that, because as long as you decide that this is the industry that you're in, it becomes incumbent upon you to find those avenues where you can really, whether it's on a weekend or an evening, just, at least one thing that you can do to de-stress and relax and recharge so that you come back at it at another day. Okay, so on that point, I want to end my presentation with a relaxing activity. And so I will ask each of you, if you guys are comfortable, you can leave your cameras on. If you want to take it off, that's fine. But I just want to ask each of you to get yourselves in a comfortable position, and we're going to do a little exercise that really helps to calm your body and calm your mind.
We could try.
Yes. All right, so no talking during the instructions, but you're doing everything, following, just listening to my voice, following the instructions. I will ask questions. They are rhetorical questions, so you don't need to respond. Answer the questions in your mind, okay? All right. So I want you to sit back or lie down if you're lying down. Get yourself in a comfortable position. And close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. And begin by taking a deep breath, noticing the feeling of air filling your lungs. Breathe in. Hold your breath for a few seconds. And now release your breath slowly, noticing the tension in your body falling away. Breathe in deeply again and hold it. And now slowly release the air. Continue breathing. And I want you to move your attention to your feet. Begin to tense your feet by curling your toes and the arch of your foot. Hold on to that tension as tightly as you can. Notice what that tension feels like. Now release the tension in your foot. Notice the feeling of relaxation. Continue breathing. Now begin to focus on your lower legs. Tense the muscles in your calves. Hold them tightly. And pay attention to the feeling of tension in your calves. Now release the tension from your lower legs. Tense the muscles in your calves again. And release. Notice the feeling of relaxation in your calves. Continue breathing deeply. Now tense the muscles of your upper leg and pelvis. You can do this by tightly squeezing your thighs together. Make sure you feel the tension without going to the point of strain. And release. Feel the tension leaving your muscles. Begin to tense your stomach and chest. You can do this by sucking your stomach in and squeeze tightly and hold the tension. Now release the tension and allow your body to go limp. Let yourself feel that sense of relaxation. Breathe in. Hold it, noticing the air in your lungs. Now release slowly, feeling the air leaving your lungs. Now tense the muscles in your back by bringing your shoulders together behind you. Hold them tightly. Tense as hard as you can without straining. Hold it. And now release the tension from your back. Feel the tension slowly leaving your body and the new feeling of relaxation taking over. Now tense your arms all the way from your hands to your shoulders. Make a fist and squeeze all the way up your arm. Hold it. And now release the tension from your arms and shoulders slowly. Notice the feeling of relaxation in your fingers, hands, arms, and shoulders. Notice how your arms feel limp and at ease. Now move up to your neck and your head. Tense your face and your neck by distorting the muscles around your eyes and mouth. Now release and notice the feeling of relaxation overcoming your face. Now finally, tense your entire body. Tense your feet, legs, stomach, chest, arms, head, neck, face. Tense harder without straining. Now release, slowly allowing your body to go limp. Pay attention to the feeling of relaxation and how different it is from the feeling of tension. Breathe in slowly. Hold and breathe out. Breathe in. And out. As you continue to breathe, with your eyes closed, I want you to imagine a place that you feel safe, calm, and relaxed. Continue breathing in and out. In this place in your mind's eye, I want you to focus on 5 things you can see. Look to your left in your mind's eye and allow your eyes to rove in the scene before you. Now notice 4 things you can hear. In this special place of yours, what are those 4 sounds? In this place, imagine 3 things you can touch. What do they feel like? Continuing to explore this space, focus on 2 things you can smell. What are those scents? How do they make you feel? And now I want you to focus on 1 thing you can taste. Breathe in. And out. Breathe in. And out. Continue breathing, taking in all sights, sounds, all feelings, all thoughts in this space that is safe, calm, and special. And when you are ready, you can slowly open your eyes.
I almost fall asleep there.
Yeah. So that was just 12 minutes, guys.
What?
That's all. That's all it took to just take a mental and physical break, to relax your entire body and to relax your mind and to go on a virtual vacation. Okay, so that's something that you guys can look at, consider doing, just to be able to bring yourself back down from some stressful days.
That wasn't like 2 minutes though.
No, it was 12 minutes.
It feel like 2 minutes.
I didn't feel like 12 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really fall asleep on the here. You know.
How was that experience?
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Joel, how was that for you?
Oddly enough, my mind reverted to like the happiest memory that I could go to.
For real. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Like my mind went to the happiest memory that I could find. It was, I never did shit like that before. So like, that's crazy to be in your mind, because you're thinking about different things, right? Like we're saying, and just my mind just started search for whatever memory that I could, and it just went to the happiest point in time I've ever been. And it was a memory that I had with my family, me, my wife, and my son. Crazy shit.
Yeah, you see, it's something as simple as that, and that is something that you can do whenever. You know, it doesn't take a lot of time, and the feelings after is really relaxing.
Yeah, Joel, you looking completely different from 12 minutes ago.
For real. He was flustered 12 minutes ago.
Yeah, you're looking relaxed and happy and smiling. This is amazing. This is the most I ever see Joel smile at one sitting, actually.
I'm so mad that I'm not going to see anybody right now.
You know how you
I stopped sharing my screen, and now I'm not seeing.
Oh, let me
love to see your faces and how relaxed you guys look.
let me
Oh, Shiva.
change back here for a second. All right, great. So you can see everybody now.
You're mute.
You're muted or something. I'm not sure. Not hearing nothing.
Not hearing anything.
All right, 1 second. Let me.
No?
Oh yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I'm not seeing you guys, but I'm seeing your presentation.
Oh, how do I? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you should see us now.
Yeah.
No, no. Okay, I'm not
That's
sure.
okay.
Probably have to change the view on top to view everyone.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, you should see something like view everyone, view webcam, screenshots.
Yeah, view who's talking.
Everything's ticked off. Everything's ticked off.
Oh, okay. Anyway, you'll actually see it for the when we send the YouTube video, so you'll see us then.
Yes.
Vandana, thank you so much. This was, I don't even know how to describe it. This was amazing. I think all of us would take away a lot from this, and we will definitely share this video with a lot of people. Seen a lot of attendees here, the same attendees that were here from the start. So guys, I hope this was eye-opening for you all. Maybe not so much on what you need to do, but just observing on what you're currently doing perhaps, and then take note of that and see where you might have to go or what you might have to stop doing. I just want to say too that it takes a lot of courage to address these things, right? One of the main reasons why I decided to have this is because a lot of you all actually reached out to me, and I may have reached out to some of you, especially my students. I care about you all a lot, actually. I know each and every single one of you. You all have my number, and I know some of the struggles that you all go through, some of my friends go through. So this was my way of trying to make sure that I could get some good help, or show you all that getting help is not difficult. There's no shame in getting help. I myself, as long as I've known myself, I've been diagnosed with clinical depression, clinical anxiety, and that's it. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's almost like having an extra arm or a leg or something. It's just something that you have to deal with, right? There's no shame in it. Has it been used against me? Yeah, sure, but does it bother me anymore? No. My friends are probably all the same, actually, whether or not they know it, but it's fine. It's okay to reach out to people to get help. Vandana will share her number as well if you want to have a session with her as well, right? Is fine. The world out there is not all roses and big smiles in the morning when you see these people coming into, hi, how are you? How was your weekend? All of that is usually a facade. It's usually, my God, it's Monday already. Why am I still back here? Why am I not home with my family? I could be with my dog, something like that, my kids. All right, so take that step to be strong, take that step to be brave and address these issues within yourself, and understand that even if you make the slightest, smallest step to getting help, that is a lot of courage there. Even in work and so on, when you decide to tell people no, not in a bad way, but just to let them know your boundaries, and this is where you are for your own mental health. We have to do that to protect ourselves and our mental health, because right now the world is upside down, things going on. I've stopped reading the news, I've stopped watching politics, and I am a much happier person for it. To de-stress, I hug my dog a lot, my mom and everybody. I keep in touch with family, do the mental things. And I think for us in IT, what we have to remember is to kind of go back inside a little bit, cut off the screens on the phones and kind of focus on you just a little bit. The email will still be there, the text messages will still be there, the problems will still be there, but I mean, it's kind of cliche, but you can't help anybody else if you can't help yourself. And if you can't help yourself, what's the point of doing some of these things that we're doing? All right. So Vandana, thank you so very much for being here this evening. This was awesome. Thank you so much, especially on behalf of Joel. Joel looks way too relaxed. It's a little scary, I have to say, but I'm very happy to see Joel smiling. I'm sure he will have a wonderful evening with his wife and son now, and hopefully that will continue.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much, guys. You want to say anything before we wrap up?
I appreciate the change away from the typical tech and cyber and security and stuff like that. It was really good to have this as a change of pace. It's something that we don't address in the industry. everybody talks about it. You see people making LinkedIn posts and this one talking and stuff like that, but to have an actual webinar to showcase these things, talk about it and address it in detail, fantastic. I appreciate it very much.
Awesome. Dale, anything?
Yeah, no, same thing with Joel. It was a good change because even when we're doing the actual webinars and workshops, we're stressing out.
Yeah.
Look at what happened before the webinar, the days before, trying to figure out who doing what, figure out what each person doing. I have this big elaborate plan when I doing these things, and when I go there, it's just like I don't say anything I was supposed to say.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't see us behind the scenes. They see these guys here and we're all professionals. We know what we're doing, but you all don't see the panic. You all don't see the anxiety. You all don't see the amount of work that actually has to go into these little demos, these labs, being in front cameras. We all have anxiety issues. For us to be able to do this is something else, but it is a challenge for us. It is something else, and in a way for us too, this is our way of kind of stepping away from the little world that we just work all the time. So to our audience as well and everyone in Discord channel too, thanks so much for helping us out with this. You know, we're here for you too, so you can reach out to us. You know, I'll make sure that I at least share my number in the Discord group. So if you all want to reach out, talk anything, if you need some advice, if you need some mentoring as well, I'm here. All right, so on that note, guys, thank you all very much for attending. Thank you very much to my panelists, Alex and Johnny. They had to leave. They were in work all the time. All right, so guys, thanks very much. Thank you, Vandana, thank you so very much. I think we might have to have a repeat of this again, if not soon, maybe next year sometime, if you could cope with us. We'd love to have you.
I will share the presentation material so you guys could always reflect on it. And I mean, feel free. There's so many topics that we could cover. So
yeah. I think I'll make a separate clip of that meditation thing you did there, and I'll probably have to play that in the night. That should probably put me to sleep like a baby. Yeah. All right, guys. So thanks so much for being here. We have another webinar up. I'll have this up on YouTube in case you want to share it with anyone you know might be helpful. Hopefully by Monday. I'm trying to cut off completely on weekends now, and I will be closing off totally in December. Maybe we might have 1 or 2 webinars at least for you all, but other than that, work-wise, I am totally out for December to take my time to relax, and I hope you all do too. So on behalf of everybody, Vandana, thank you once again. And guys, be safe, take care of each other, and please be good to yourselves, right? So we'll see you all most likely next week for another workshop. So on behalf of all of us at the Computer Forensics and Security Institute and the CyberFence series, thanks again and take care. We'll see you all soon.